What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy show with me, your host, Tara Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, August 5th. I apologize for not being here with you last week. It was my birthday last week. And so I thought, I don't know, maybe I just take the day off-ish, I guess at least the evening off, but we're back. And I'm with you every single week now through the end of time, apparently, through draft season, and then through the regular season, answering all your questions live here. So jump in the chat, drop any questions that you have, because it is training camp. Obviously, we have a ton of stuff that we can cover, right? And I've also got some mailbag questions, of course, since that is the obligation of this show. But let's start off with general news. Obviously, the most recent news that happened here. Stefon Diggs, hot off the press to the Commanders. That's, we have discussed Stefon Diggs and Brandon Ayuk reluctantly more than I would have liked to this offseason, but I feel like we were all on the same page here on my YouTube channel that this was going to be Stefon Diggs that was going to the Commanders. They were going to add another receiver. I still think that Chig has value, obviously, probably not the second look here now, but still late round value in tight end premium leagues and deep leagues as well. There are potential, but not the upside that we would have definitely gotten if they did not add a receiver. But Stefon Diggs is a nice compliment to Terry McLaurin there. This is great for Jaden Daniels because, again, it was just rather a misfit group of pass catchers. We were hopeful that Chig, because we know his talent, right, would be able to, but we haven't seen that out of him in terms of his production in Tennessee. We were hopeful that he would be able to ascend in this offense and be a reliable look. But outside of that, hoping that a rookie in Antonio Williams could come through, it was just really just a misfit group of secondary looks there. So it's good news for Jaden Daniels. Makes me feel a little bit better about him, right? Because he needed that addition to his offense. And then in terms of expectations for Stefon Diggs, the good people of the universe have already, the best ball drafters, they have already begun dropping little tidbits in terms of where Stefon Diggs is immediately going now in best ball drafts that are going on right now. Most common answer that I'm seeing is around round 9 to 10, which does mean, and again, best ball drafts are not always the clearest, most accurate indication of where players will go, especially receivers, right? But at the end of the day, it does give us a decent baseline of immediate reactions there. So late, not super late round value. Congrats to people that were drafting early and maybe got him at a discount there in terms of late rounds. But realistically, 8 to 9 is probably the range that I think it will settle in with because he does have he has that curb appeal of people wanting. And I think where he'll end up going is, you guys know that I love, and this is like my baseline ADP range, my reference point for everything. You guys know that I love Quentin Johnston, right? Not that I'm not a Quentin Johnston truther, but at his ADP, it's tough to ignore with the bounce back that we're expecting from this Chargers offense. But that is the range where I think he will slip ahead, right? So if you're trying to visualize it, I don't know that people will get bold enough to push him ahead of guys like Jordan Tyson or Brian Thomas Jr., but I definitely would see him going ahead of that next grouping of wide receivers, which is kind of like that Quentin Johnston, Wan'Dale Robinson kind of range there. So that would be my best baseline in terms of expectations for where he will go. We will not be getting any discount on him. So at least the veterans are falling into place. It'll be interesting to see where Keenan Allen ends up. I'm very happy that we did not get Brandon, although I'm not happy for a dynasty share. But I am happy we didn't get the mess of Brandon Ayuk in Washington, because that would have been... He needs some time to figure stuff out before we can get him back on the field in a regular capacity there. But outside of that, I think that's the major updates to Washington's offense. Obviously, let's pause here for a second, because we are getting reports out of, we're still trying to figure out this backfield, right? Because the ADPs on all of these guys, in terms of particularly JCM and Rachaad White, very reasonable. A committee, probably the most realistic outcome, right? But even at their ADPs, investing into a committee, hoping that one of them can pull away, is not the worst thing in the world. We talked earlier in the offseason about JCM in terms of knowing that the one thing that he had to improve on was his pass blocking and being a better receiving option. He knew that, he acknowledged it, and we have been getting reports that that has been an area of improvement for him. How much he could improve to the point where he could push Rachaad White out of the way, that would be a long way to go, because that really is something that Rachaad White is like excellent at, right? But enough to the point where it gives them the ability to kind of diversify their offense, right? In terms of them not having to be super predictable and saying when JCM is on the field, it's early down, it's going to be a run, he's not going to catch the ball. When Rachaad White's on the field, it's a passing down, right? So if he really has improved in this area and can give them the flexibility to still operate as a committee, but a mixed committee to where it's not predictable, that's great for their offense, and that's also great for JCM as well. So these are positive things here. Positive things. Jump into the chat here. I see all the birthday wishes. Thank you so much to Walter Brown and David Harper and Derek Lincoln. Appreciate that as well. Donald Gillespie, thank you. Cruz and Shaker says, how much of a bump will Jaden get from the Diggs signing? I don't think he will. I think he's very solidified at QB 5. Well, for me, I have Hurts ahead of him, but he's very solidified in terms of just generic rankings and ECR at QB 5. I don't see that he would push ahead of Burrow. So, I mean, it's very lockstep. The only thing people argue, everyone's, Josh Allen, right? QB 1, all good. People argue over Lamar versus Drake May. That's just splitting hairs, right? I have Lamar higher, but it's whatever. It's 2 and 3. Then Joe Burrow, very solidified. And then Jaden Daniels. So I just don't think he can push up higher than those guys. So great from the fact, maybe he bumps up a couple spots in overall ADP, but still I wouldn't expect that much. So it's fantastic. We got an addition here, solid wide receiver 2, and he's not going to see a bump in his ADP. So that is fantastic. Good thing to point out there for sure. Let's see here. We got Panda of Love. Who should I try to target with Rashee Rice? Who should I try to target with Rashee Rice trade in Dynasty? Oh boy. This was a tough one because as somebody who does roster Rashee Rice, it's a difficult trade because everyone knows the reality of the fact that he is, for the next several years, a constant risk to go to jail because he's on probation, right? So he is literally the most volatile asset in the NFL with a high ceiling, right? Because he is the wide receiver 1. The rest of the receiving core has been underwhelming, although we are getting positive reports out of Cyrus Allen. So maybe, hopefully, that can be something in terms of a downfield threat because they need that. But again, that would be specifically, hopefully, a downfield threat that would not threaten Rashee Rice's role in particular because he's very solidified and he is, 5 yards beyond the scrimmage, right? 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, right? So very specific role for him. Honestly, if you're trying to trade him, it would probably, or if you're trying to target, I don't know if you're trying to target to trade him away or get him, but I would say go to another position because it's too sticky in terms of value to try and trade him off for another wide receiver, unless you were maybe wanting to transfer into something that maybe is lower in terms of upside, but sorry, I'm getting text messages here. Lower in terms of text messages from my brother who should know I'm live. He's been slacking, by the way. Yeah, I'm gonna send him, I'm gonna clip this and send it to him because he has been slacking on his support of my fantasy football content, and he's asking me fantasy football questions. He's asking me a best ball draft question right now, Jay Roberts. So in terms of trying to target someone with Rashee Rice, I do think it has to be maybe trying to go for something below him in value or going to a different position and taking a volatility trade on a running back maybe. Maybe that would be the case there. But again, it's just, he's such a tough trade. It's hard to even say on that one. Thank you, Darren DM. Appreciate that. With the super chat is a happy birthday gift. Appreciate that. Thank you. Jumping back here to the chat here for, let's see. Did Diggs, leaving. Yeah, let's stay on here real quick. Did Diggs leave? Did Diggs do anything for Terry? Yeah. This one is tough because it's always a precarious thing to say someone was added in and it did a positive thing because technically speaking, it does limit the kind of like massive potential target share that he would get. But what I do think is going to happen here that does benefit Terry McLaurin is not that it's going to benefit him from a fantasy perspective or from a production perspective. What I think it's going to benefit here is the ADP being more advantage to us. I think we will see a dip in ADP, and it was already low enough to begin with. I mean, I want to say wide receiver 22-ish. Let me double check here for you guys what he is in ECR right now. Wide receiver 22. Whoa, I'm right. Wide receiver 22 here. I could see the addition of Stephon Diggs pushing him back below Devontae Adams, below Luther Burden. Mike Evans, I don't know, just because of the injury thing. We'll talk about that in a second. Injuries have popped up here. But you get into a range where I don't know if he'll push back further then. But we'll probably see him dip back just a tiny bit here. So getting more value on him, because I do think he'll remain the wide receiver 1. Because what you will see, and I've already seen a little bit of it, is people referencing the volume that Stephon Diggs had last year in New England and saying, oh my God, I mean, that's what's going to be available in Washington. No, Stephon Diggs was the wide receiver 1, right? Unquestioned wide receiver 1. I know sometimes it didn't feel like it, especially in terms of snap count and then touchdowns in particular throughout the season. But for the most part, the man was a very clear wide receiver 1 in that offense. So I would not expect that kind of volume to directly translate over to Washington. Completely different situation, but it's enough of a threat that we're going to see that decrease in ADP on Terry McLaurin. So I actually think it makes him easier to buy, just because, again, wide receiver 1 that you are getting as potentially now a high-end wide receiver 3 ADP. So I'm still in, just because the value is there. The value is there for sure. Jumping to the comments here. Yeah, Loving Life says, I still like Okonkwo in DC. It's not as if we're paying some kind of egregious price here. And if we get Jaden Daniels back on track in terms of volume, yeah, for sure. Seeing some comments about Zay Flowers here. Definitely something that we want to talk about in terms of that massive payday that we're getting there. Cruz and Shaker says, with Flowers getting that big payday, should we expect a bigger production from him, or will the Ravens still lean on the run? So I am excited to see an increase in pass volume potentially here with the new system with Declan Doyle. Now, to be fair, Chicago was run heavy last year, so I would not expect him to bring over massive volume, but I wouldn't expect it to be, we're going to lean more aggressively on the run here, going to have better utilization of the wide receivers as a whole, and hopefully these rookies getting in here and making an impact as well. But the thing about Flowers is he was right on the cusp last year, right? Right on the cusp last year in terms of if Lamar had played a full season. He's been creeping up in terms of target share, well over 25% now. I think he was at 29% target share last year. So not an increase in more looks, but the same target share in an offense that maybe will function a little bit better, a little bit more efficient, and a healthy Lamar Jackson there. Yeah, I could see this being a potential top 5 year for him. I've seen some hot takes of people saying like overall wide receiver 1. I don't know that we're going to get that level of volume, but what I will say is that because I've seen some comments saying that Lamar can't supply the level of volume that Flowers would need to have big upside, and that's not true like at all. We just saw Sam Darnold supply directly JSN with enough volume to be literally just behind Puka Nacua, because it's tough to outdo Puka Nacua, right? But to literally provide competing overall wide receiver 1 volume there. And Sam Darnold threw less yardage than we have seen in Lamar's best season. So Lamar can get up there and provide plenty of volume, especially if we have this 28 to 30% target share funnel directly towards Flowers. And I do like the rookies in particular. Jacoby Lane was a prospect that I loved, and I'm very excited to see the positive news out of him in training camp. But my thing with Jacoby Lane was that he will open up the offense more and push Rashad Bateman out. He was just a guy, right? And they need to move on from that and try to get somebody with a little bit more juice in there. And I think Jacoby Lane is that guy. And training camp is potentially proving that there. So bigger production from Zay Flowers this year? Yes, by Lamar Jackson being healthy, because we're on the right track there for him. We do need more touchdowns, right? But we're on the right track there in terms of that overall volume, the targets, and the yardage there. So feeling good about it. Donald Gillespie says, I can see Andy Reid grabbing Ayuk. He gives second chances and banged up, second chances and receivers banged up and iffy. You know, they are a franchise that low-key does like a little, let's call it mischief. Yeah, so they don't mind a little rough around the edges receivers. Yeah, well, I think maybe that's the best way to put it. So low-key, realistically, that does logically make sense there on that one. I know everyone kind of thought, Tyreek Hill, but it seems like Tyreek Hill is more on that Odell Beckham Jr. kind of track when he came off of his major injury, to where you won't see him until towards the end of the season if you do, right? So I don't think he's relatively ready. So if they need another receiver, and they do, Xavier Worthy got another shoulder injury, not serious, they say, right? But again, it's concerning. Cyrus Allen, who again I said, was popping in training camp, got banged up a little bit, but should be fine there. But ultimately, they got to find somebody. But I don't know if they'll do it. Especially because the 49ers can hold on until whenever, and ultimately Brandon Ayuk still has to request to actually be reinstated. So kind of on him too as well. Stephen King says AJ Brown or Emeka Egbuka. Both on that one. I have AJ Brown ranked higher than Emeka Egbuka. And I do love Emeka for sure. He is one of my primary targets that I try to walk away from every draft with. So from that perspective, I have AJ Brown. He's wide receiver 8 for me. I think in ECR, what is he? Wide receiver. Let me see. In ECR, he is wide receiver 8 as well. Okay, I thought I was higher. No. So he's wide receiver 8. A fairly high end, for sure, second round draft pick there. I would say, though, that I've had more shares of Emeka Egbuka because it is just easier to attain him, just because AJ has to be drafted in a specific spot. And for some reason, I have had a lot more into the first picks, which by default means that I'm typically not getting him because of the way that I draft and target a wide receiver in the first round. So just it's not working out for me, but I'm perfectly fine with AJ Brown. Obviously, there are bodies there in terms of Romeo Doubs and obviously Kayshon Boutte, who is a potential trade guy as well. But and Mac Hollins, and they've got options and bodies there. But at the end of the day, AJ Brown is the wide receiver 1. Little injury there for him, but not a big issue. And we should see an increase in volume from Drake May as well, because it was fairly low volume last season, mainly operating off efficiency. So with a tougher schedule, we should get a little bit more volume push there as well. So I have AJ higher. I've got Emeka at my wide receiver 17, but I have drafted more shares of Emeka this season. Not going to lie on that one. Just again, more attainable. Love them both though. Cruz and Shaker says, is there a rookie that you've had high hopes on, but maybe news from training camp changed your views? Eli Stowers. I guess, actually tight ends in general, Jesus Christ. We've been spoiled at tight end for years now. We had the nice run of, McBride, although it took McBride a second to break out, but McBride, Laporta right off the bat there, Dalton Kincaid the first year, right? And then after that, not so much, but we've been spoiled with these, really talented rookies, especially last year. My God, all over the board, right? And now we come to this year, and there's not a single rookie tight end that we're even looking at remotely thinking could be relied upon as a tight end 1 in redraft. So, and even in, I took Sadiq in one of my dynasty leagues where I have Isaiah Likely, but, again, I just didn't want to rely on that. And so I was like, okay, let me go ahead and get Sadiq and try to really solidify my tight end 1. Didn't want to rely on Likely. But at the end of the day, that's probably still who I'm going to have to rely on, because Kenyon Sadiq there. There was a lot of positive news in terms of him being used in a lot of alignments as a, very sharp, multi-talented weapon there. And the hernia causing additional issues there, and them saying, we'll think he'll be on track for week 1. But recurring issues on the same thing kind of makes me worry that we're going to be teetering into this area of something that is lingering in him and bothering him, and maybe he has to go in and have an additional surgery. That's just random thinking, not anything for sure, anything that's been reported on, but it does make you worry when a player has an injury, gets past it, gets to training camp, and then has a setback regarding that injury. So I would say the rookie tight ends are the ones that have been disappointing me. Now that we've got the New England rookie tight end who is making waves and whatnot, but again, training camp waves are not always 100% reliable, and we know that, again, that offense does have a lot of bodies in it and a brand new wide receiver 1. So, I mean, even with Hunter Henry last year, the production was so inconsistent and underwhelming, right? So I don't know if there's going to be something there for us in general. So that was nice, right? And then, we had rookies going into not ideal situations like the LA Rams, where it's just going to be a combobulation of 3-4 tight ends all used together. So yeah, it's the rookie tight ends in general. Eli Stowers missed a lot of the offseason dealing with an injury as well, so we did not hear from him. And reports are really that, it's, Dallas Goedert that is, looking like Dallas Goedert in training camp, and that, we're probably going to see him having a bunch of red zone looks, kind of repeating the same level of type of production that he had last year, which is interesting because maybe that's someone that we can all look at as a high-end tight end too, that can, give us some value at a very low ADP and be reliable on a weekly basis, especially in the beginning of the season where they're trying to, figure out this new pass offense and integrate Mekhi Lemon and whatnot. And the exit of A.J. Brown, that's a big body exiting. So perhaps some of those looks go to Dallas Goedert. So that's something to key in on since we're not hearing anything remotely encouraging about Eli Stowers being a usable fantasy asset anytime soon. So yeah, I would say that's the frustration point for me there. Unfortunately, the rookie tight end's frustrating me. Let's see here. Then we've got Easy E13 saying, "Oh boy, Tara, I think Scary Terry is going to ball, and I'm digging their new wide receiver core." See what I did there? I do. I like it. That is my type of joking. 100% there. I agree. This is going to be a very interesting and very good one. Before we move on here, I did want to show you guys just a little promo here. Something that you can take advantage of. The Dynasty Deluxe package with Player Profiler now features the ADP Tracker 2.0 with Sleeper ADPs, which we all need, right? Because we're all drafting on Sleeper, let's be honest, for all formats, and the Trade Finder 2.0, and pulling hundreds of Sleeper trades across formats all week, which is super cool. So let's take a little break here to hear about that.
What does Player Profiler do best? Dynasty. Do we have the best Dynasty rankings there are? They have tight end premium. Super flex. But also win now mode versus rebuild mode. The most sophisticated best rankings using Player Profiler data that exist in the world are available on playerprofiler.com. Big surprise. That's right. There's a trade analyzer to know, should I make this trade or not? And then there's a trade finder. There's Dynasty League Sync. There's an ADP tracker. All the tools Dynasty League players need. So get it now. It's $45, not per month, per year. So let's go start building super teams.
There we go. Dynasty Deluxe package. I believe that you can get 15, 25%, something. You can get some kind of discount between 15 to 25% off with promo code TARA at checkout there on that package there. Now let's jump back here to the chat. Do we still have from Cruise and Shake, do we still have high hopes for Mike Evans this season? And I saw a comment on one of my YouTube videos glancing, and I didn't get to click the entire thing and look at it because I wanted to see because I assumed what it was going to say and I was going to respond, but I forgot to click it. Sorry. But Mike Evans, I have been avoiding like the plague. And the problem here with me and Mike Evans is that I 100% believe that Mike Evans will be the wide receiver 1 of that offense. I have no concerns about that. 100%. When Mike Evans is on the field, he is fantastic. He still has juice. When you physically don't see age creeping up on him or any issues like that. But the problem is that he has had way too many repeated similar injuries, hamstrings in particular, right? And when you get when you get a wide receiver, or even running back too, but especially wide receivers, and they're over 30 and you have these repeated hamstring issues, suddenly you might be on your Cooper Cup, right? Unfortunately, in terms of the downturn in age just catching up with you. And my primary concern there for Mike Evans is that I don't feel very confident that he will make it through the season. That's the only thing, is that like if you want to, and he's already injured, it's a quad injury. It doesn't seem like it's serious, right? But again, there's so many injuries in training camps. It's hard to, we know if you get carted off, it's a serious injury. But the little nicks that happen here and there, it's kind of hard to judge if it's really something that's going to be a major or lingering issue. Because again, while we don't panic over training camp injuries, do remember that a lot of these do end up lingering in season. So just kind of be aware of that, to kind of just try and follow and see how serious it is, and really, check in with the beat reporters and see what's going on there. And again, it sounded like the Mike Evans injury is not that serious, but to get one right off the bat here, the whole 49ers offense. Let's talk about the 49ers in general right now and the struggles that they are having with injuries. Anyone and everyone, with the exception of Christian McCaffrey, is injured right now. Which again, just conspiracy theories of just like, why just Christian McCaffrey staying healthy, the substation, all of that good stuff. Trying to figure out why this team suffers so much. It's ridiculous at that point. But looking at Mike Evans here, again, I feel if you want to draft him and you say, okay, if he's on the field weeks 1 through 6, I know that I'm getting wide receiver 1 production. And maybe I have to sacrifice 6 weeks in the middle. And maybe I get him back for the fantasy playoffs. It's, maybe, if you've got IR spots and you want to take that risk, just know that if you draft him, you might want to go a little bit heavier at receiver in order to have a backup option, because the injury risk for him is so elevated at this point, right? It only takes so many seasons of seeing it in a row for an older receiver for you to say this is probably going to be a recurring problem at this point in your career here. So that's my only issue with him. Other than that, when he's on the field, production is going to be there, but I just have zero confidence that he's going to be able to stay healthy. DBF Tells says 12 teams, second pick. Also kept Taylor as a round 2 keeper. Is taking Chase for or Puka crazy? No, I don't think so. If you've kept Taylor, I would 100% go that direction there. Second pick, yeah. It's tough, right? Because Bijan and Gibbs have such massive upside. And honestly, you could be a diabolical team with the well, you know what? You could be diabolical with the combination of, actually, I kind of revert my opinion on that one. Because you have Taylor, you would literally be set at running back there, taking Gibbs or Puka, and assuming they're not one of the keepers there. But if one of them were, they are probably keepers. Actually, comment that if it would either be one of them. But if you have the ability, right, to take either one of those running backs and stack up there, I would do that. Otherwise, I would definitely go high-end wide receiver there with Puka or Chase. I would shoot for the ceiling and go with Puka, in my opinion. That's my preference there. Clark Kent says Kenneth Gainwell or Blake Corum. You guys know I love Kenneth Gainwell, so this might seem a little contrarian here, but I would go with Blake Corum on that one. And the reason for that is, while I love Kenneth Gainwell, and again, I do have my concerns about Bucky, in terms of handcuffing opportunities, and if Bucky were to go down and if Kyren Williams were to go down, the upside would be 10 times higher for Blake Corum. Because at the end of the day, if Bucky goes down, Kenneth Gainwell is still going to have Sean Tucker working in there at the goal line as well. It would not be a situation of Kenneth Gainwell being a 3-down back. He would get work on the ground. He would get receiving work, so he'd be fine. He'd be a solid RB2, high upside. I would feel good about him. But Blake Corum, if Kyren Williams were to go down, would be a league-winning type of pick, right? And both of them, apples to apples, yes, Kenneth Gainwell has more receiving upside, so maybe a little bit of a bump in full PPR. But at the end of the day, the production, as long as the Rams offense is even operating at 90%, 80% of what it was last season, there's going to be enough for Blake Corum to be fantasy relevant-ish on a weekly basis in the same way of Kenneth Gainwell. So, I mean, same usability on a week-to-week basis, but much higher upside. Sorry, hit my mic. Much higher upside there with Blake Corum. It would be Blake Corum that I prefer there. I do love Kenneth Gainwell. I hate to say that. His ADP has gone up way too much. Kenneth Gainwell was someone who I was ready to go to war for if we were getting good value on him, and the value has disappeared because everyone has risen it up. Sometimes when the ADP rises too much, you kind of have to zig where everyone else is zagging and look at it and say, maybe this, I love him and I believe in him, right? But if I'm looking at the ultimate upside, perhaps this ADP just moved up a wee bit too much there. So yeah, it's Blake Corum for me. Shout out to James Marshall, who said, love your work. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Loving Life says, Pearsall injury should open up thoughts for Stribling, in my opinion. Thoughts? Yes. Do I have a mailbag question on Stribling? I cannot remember off the top of my head. But I don't think I do. Let's go ahead and talk about the 49ers a little bit more here, because we mentioned all the injuries that they had, and Ricky Pearsall was obviously the big one, season ending, done for the year. Sucks, right? But at the end of the day, that does open up things for Stribling. Unfortunately, he's also dealing with an injury. As I said, I think Christian McCaffrey is siphoning everyone's health there. All the receivers are dealing with injuries, but when Deebo Samuel being added there does kind of hurt but you know what? At the very least, it does mean that Stribling is a late round dart throw. The ADP was going to rise as we were getting the Ricky Pearsall news. So Deebo there at least does stop us and make it so that Stribling is a late round pick. Ultimately, I do think that Deebo is probably going to have the priority there. But we do know that Deebo, visibly has looked a little like he's, teetering towards the edge there. Was okay last season in Washington, but nothing special. Now to his, in defense of him a little bit on there, some of that obviously would not be his fault. The offense as a whole was a little wishy-washy, right, with the injuries to Dayton Daniels. So Deebo was probably doing the best that he could, but at the end of the day, he didn't look like the same old Deebo. Now maybe in the 49ers system, we get him looking back like the original version, but at the end of the day, he's still, teetering up there in terms of years. So there's still opportunity here for Stribling to make an impact there as the wide receiver 3. It just makes it a little bit more difficult for him to push through now, because now it does include Deebo that he would have to push through as well, but still remains someone who I think is a solid late round dart throw for sure, especially because knowing that in terms of profiles, they plan to use Deebo the same way they did before, right? All over the place, gadgety, out of the backfield and whatnot. And with Stribling, we knew that he was kind of replacing Jawan Jennings and kind of an archetype there. So at the very least, we know that they don't technically conflict in that manner. So there's that positive there. So still worth a late round dart throw. But again, we have to remember that Deebo being there is going to kind of put a little bit of a wall up there that he has to get through as well. From Casey Coleman. Hello, Tara. I know everyone is all over Parker Washington, Myers, and BTJ, but I think Britton Strange is a secret great tight end in the weeds who could be great. Possibly there. My only concern there is that I think how quickly can I pull this up? Target share is my only issue there, and I'm looking. Normally I have target distribution up. Yeah, okay, I've got it. Jacksonville, target distribution to tight ends was 19.2% last year, which puts them fourth from last. That's my only issue. Unless we see a conceptual change from Liam Cohen's system, there's not a massive amount of targets that they send to the tight end position. And they did add multiple tight ends as well that have looked pretty decent in training camp, so they could get a little bit of bird. He's still the tight end one for sure. I don't think that they're pushing, it's additional bodies like rookie Tanner Koziol, who is massive. He's like 6'7", 6'8", maybe. He's big, 6'7", I think. Big potential red zone target there. But at the end of the day, I would feel more comfortable if they had a higher target share to the tight ends. So he's fine. He'll be a nice stable option. I can see myself 10 times over playing him in DFS on certain matchups on a week-to-week basis. because again, you'll probably get him in terms of cost. Sorry, I'm thinking DFS immediately. I'm excited. I'm ready to play DFS. I miss it. Get him at lower cost there. So it's fine, but I would not draft him with the expectation that I'm going to be getting double-digit fantasy points on a weekly basis that I can rely on. So late round targets, like if you would want to maybe, if you're in a deeper league and you have enough bench spots and you would like to draft him alongside another later tight end, like maybe you draft Strange and a Dallas Goedert and you kind of solidify yourself there with two stable bodies that are the tight end ones that you could play off of each other depending on matchups. I think that's perfectly fine. Maybe you even go a little bit deeper there as well. Would be doable, but not my favorite in terms of targeting later for upside, just because with target share, it's going to be a little bit capped there. That's the only issue. Very talented. I like them. But targets are the main issue, unfortunately. The one thing that held him back. And then Casey also says, in watching Hard Knocks Seahawks last night, Price looked like the real deal. Yeah, this is one that we've been talking about a lot this offseason because there's so much that hinges on Zach Charbonnet's price, or Zach Charbonnet's availability there. But it doesn't look like he's going to be ready in week 1. I'm hoping that they're just being conservative in the language that they're using in terms of, well, we're not going to overload the rookie and whatnot. And once you get him out there, it's going to be someone who clearly you want to prioritize in terms of looks between him and apparently George Holani. I will say the good thing about it being George Holani that seems to be the one that would play off of him is that Holani would have the clear edge in terms of passing downs and, receiving work, check downs and whatnot. I do not see a scenario where they would want to use Holani at the goal line over Darian Price. So theoretically, this probably works out for them. I might be a little bit worried about when Charbonnet comes back, but hopefully they don't rush him along there. But the price is not, it's not going up too high on Price in terms of ADP. So I think he's a fine target. Because he's staying in that high-end RB3 range. We're taking a nice conservative approach there. So, and he looks good for sure. I do think he's the real deal. I think him being the RB2 of that class was well warranted. Like it wasn't even close, probably, as much as we like some other guys. The ABC Squared says, Tara, we need to do the fantasy football and stock drafts. I emailed you a month ago. Contact me again. Maybe I missed that. I'm not awesome with emails. Contact me again on that one, for sure. And no problem on misspelling the name. I'm A-okay on that one. Yeah, contact me again. I'm sorry. Donald Gillespie, maybe the Niners will keep Ayuk. Sounds like they could use him. Just saying. That would be something. That would be hilarious, honestly. Cruisin' Shaker says, when would be a good round to take a shot on a player who is probably behind a starter that you would believe would have a good opportunity for a breakout season, and who is that type of player for you? Oh, I mean, I guess it would be easy for me to just say Blake Corum after we just talked about it, right? But let me give you someone else, right? And I think, and honestly, I think running backs are often, the easier ones to do because there's a lot of guys like Blake Corum, and Kyle Monangai is another one. Kyle Monangai dealing with a soft tissue injury there. We'll need to monitor that one because obviously if he did not, or if this was a lingering issue, that would obviously be massive for DeAndre Swift because the Bears are extremely run heavy. It doesn't seem like it. They were top 5 in rush attempts last year, and obviously Caleb Williams runs, but it wasn't that dramatic to where that was the driving factor there. They were surprisingly low-key run heavy, and it gets overlooked because we did have that integrated use of Kyle Monangai as well. So if there were something seriously going on here, I mean, good God, the value that we would be getting on Swift is amazing. But as long as Kyle Monangai is okay, that is one of my ones that I feel very good about targeting. And I think the appropriate spot to target guys like that, honestly, let's see. I would be okay with doing that maybe around round 8 is the point at which I would start making those. 8, 9 is the point at which I would start looking at drafting those type of players. I think 7, you can still get some potential value there and you don't have to reach up. But 8 and 9 is where I would start looking at those types of players that could have breakout seasons. Again, you guys know I love Quentin Johnston. I'll say it again 10 times over there that we're expecting a big improvement from this Chargers offense, right? And if you're not expecting Quentin Johnston to be a part of it, then honestly, you should be drafting Lad McConkey at an egregious level, right? Because we know that this pass volume is going to increase for Justin Herbert under the new scheme. We know we're getting a healthier offensive line. We know that last season was massively underperforming seasons for all pass catchers, apparently not named Keenan Allen, because that's all that they could do was manage to get the ball to Keenan Allen earlier in the season. But even as the season went on, even that became difficult. It just really struggled with consistency with all the injuries to the offensive line. So if we know this is bouncing back here, and we know the level of deep threat, we know the creativity that Mike McDaniel brings to this offense, and we know that we don't have to draft a Quentin Johnston until, I mean, my God, what is his ADP right now? Like round 9? Yeah. Like pick 904 is where he's going around right now, and he's rising, but there's still significant value. He actually did outperform in terms of average fantasy points per game, outperform Lad McConkey last season. And again, that's no insult to Lad, because the offense as a whole in terms of the pass game failed because of the offensive line. But if we know he is capable of doing that, and even at the beginning of the season when Joe Alt was healthy, it was Quentin Johnston that was operating, like had the highest upside in terms of wide receiver 1 production. So if we know all of that, we should be targeting a guy like Quentin Johnston once you get into those later mid rounds, because it's a high upside play rather than playing it safe and drafting another guy. You know, you could also grab a guy like Michael Wilson at that point, right? That's a great place to also grab a Michael Wilson there, who I do think is behind Marvin Harrison Jr., and Marvin Harrison Jr. is the wide receiver 1, but this is a new regime, right? A new regime with Nathaniel Hackett. But regardless, this is a new regime here, and it is entirely possible that we do get a shift in focus from this offense, because they don't have that inherent loyalty to Marvin Harrison Jr. So if he underperforms to begin the season, I could see a little bit of a shift there, right? Let's see here. We got a super chat from, by the way, I've never seen that before. I wish I had called that out earlier. Stephen King had a super chat of 30 joules. I've never seen that before. Thank you for that super chat there, Stephen King. Appreciate it. And then super chat there from Panda of Love. Thank you guys. Again, really appreciate it here. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm seeing some kind of funny comment from somebody here. I don't know what's going on. But Miles Logan in the chat says, what about Christian Kirk? Also injured. The 49ers, good God. Ridiculous here, the injuries that are happening. Let me rapid fire through these so we can get to some mailbag questions here. From Tanu Kidrum, buying into a 2-man keeper league with established teams. Team option 1 is Justin Jefferson and George Pickens. Option 2 is Brock Bowers and Kyron Williams. Option 1 or 2. 2-man keeper, Brock Bowers and Kyron Williams, Justin Jefferson and George Pickens. Man, I think I do have to go with option 1 on that one and go with Jefferson and Pickens, especially if it's risky, right? There's nothing risky about Justin Jefferson, right? But it's risky in the fact that Kyron and Bowers are very solidified in the teams that they have right now. George Pickens, we're hoping that he gets that contract and can remain with Dallas. But if not, perhaps good season, perhaps paid to be a wide receiver 1 elsewhere, I would be perfectly fine with him staying in Dallas. And then Justin Jefferson for the bounce back here, hoping that Kyler Murray, who it does appear, you get some spotty reports out of training camp. By the way, in terms of quarterbacks, guys, beware of quarterback training camp kings, right? You hear a lot of spotty stuff out of Cleveland about, it's Dylan Gabriel. Yeah, against the 3rd team, right? Beware. I do think it's going to be Kyler Murray that ends up being the QB1 there and winning the job. And that will be a benefit for Justin Jefferson because obviously he has succeeded with a wide range of quarterbacks that were filling in due to injuries previously when Kirk Cousins was injured. And we know that basically the issue last year was really just J.J. McCarthy, right? Just subpar play overall. And Justin Jefferson, even with a quarterback like Kyler Murray, long term, maybe it works out and they keep him, maybe not, and they dip into this year's upcoming quarterback class, which is, a little bit expected to be a little bit richer in terms of prospects here. So I would take the option of going with the wide receivers there and going with Justin Jefferson and George Pickens there. Tough to pass up Bowers. It is. From Henry Odom, CeeDee Lamb versus Justin Jefferson is extremely close. Who do you prefer and why? Depends on how risky you want to get. CeeDee Lamb is super safe, right? He is basically the wide receiver 5 now in terms of rankings. That's where I've got him as well, just because the volume is so secure. Even with the addition of George Pickens last year, CeeDee Lamb was still pacing for over 150 targets in healthy games. Like if you parse it down to games where he played full and healthy and leave out the ones where he left early and didn't play, his average pace for the season would have been over 150 targets. So the volume was still there. Perhaps maybe it could come down a little bit if the defense in Dallas does improve. But even then, with Dak Prescott at quarterback, you're just pass happy, right? So at the end of the day, the volume is there. So it's very safe in terms of Dak. And Justin Jefferson is just risky, right? If Kyler Murray does pan out, Justin Jefferson would factually outperform CeeDee Lamb just because of the level of upside that we know for sure. In all seasons except for the one last year, Justin Jefferson has paced a minimum of 1,400 yards every single year. We know the level of solid floor and high ceiling that he has. And I don't know that CeeDee Lamb ultimately, alongside George Pickens, has that same level of ceiling there. But it's riskier because you are relying on Kyler Murray to be decent, and you are relying on him to stay healthy for the majority of the season. So my preference there is just playing it safe with CeeDee Lamb. But I'm not opposed to Justin Jefferson by any means. But it does, again, mean that you are relying on him to be healthy, Kyler Murray to be healthy, because I don't think it's it with J.J. McCarthy. I don't think it's it, sadly. From Frank in the chat says, "Hey, Tara, I am struggling with Drake London." Me too. We keep saying that he doesn't have a great quarterback, including this year, yet we keep moving him up into the top 10 and over again. When do we start to fade him? So this is the reason why CeeDee Lamb is my wide receiver 5, despite the fact that CeeDee Lamb factually does not have the same ceiling as Drake London. Drake London has the higher ceiling, right? His competition is Bijan and Kyle Pitts. We know there's a certain level that Kyle Pitts can go to, like expecting 100 targets, very realistic there. And then Bijan, and we know this team is probably going to have to continue to throw a little bit. They've been dealing with injuries on defense as well. They've been trying to improve on defense, but they keep getting hit with injuries, unfortunately. So again, they're still going to be pushing volume through the air, but it is a quarterback situation, right? How much do we trust Tua Tagovailoa, who looks like he is trending towards being the week 1 quarterback? Michael Penix arguably is the one that we do prefer. We have seen, we saw at the beginning of the season that Michael Penix was reliable enough to provide enough volume and upside and deep balls to Drake London for me to say I would be comfortable. If it was Michael Penix starting as a guarantee, honestly, I would feel decently comfortable about it, but I just don't know how I feel about Tua, and I don't know how I feel about Penix being able to hold on to the job once he actually is able to start. We could see a flip back and forth here. It's just such a weird quarterback situation. So you're right on that one, and that's why I argue for, hey, you have to go for a guy like CeeDee Lamb over him, or just skip over that section of wide receivers as a whole because of the level of risk that they inherently offer, which is also why, from a strategy standpoint, and it depends on where you are picking in the first round, but my preference there is to grab one of the more stable options at wide receiver, and if not, I'm getting a running back, right? And then I will push wide receiver to I'll flip around and play it in terms of trying to avoid that area of shaky, questionable wide receivers, right? And just push it back a little bit further because there's a lot of guys who also have risk, but they cost a little bit less, and you can invest in those higher end running backs early. So that's my perspective in trying to dance around that, because you're right, it keeps getting pushed up, but it's pushed up because everyone in that range is dealing with issues. Nico Collins has, a capped ceiling with CJ Stroud. Chris Olave. Are we trusting Tyler Shuck? What is the impact of Jordan Tyson? Rashee Rice, can you legally stay on the field? Devontae Smith, what is this? What is the true upside, right? And I do like Devontae Smith. I like a bunch of these guys, right? And I will have them, but I'm just saying that all of these guys have questionable situations or stumbling into new workloads or switching teams like AJ Brown. So it's a weird range. And that's why Drake London is pushed up into the top 10, because everyone's dealing with that. And ultimately he's getting pushed up because we know that the ceiling is just so dramatically high there. The chat here, Cruz and Shakers says it's probably a given that the Rams DST will be a favorite pickup, but with the news of Aaron Donald practicing, if he does sign or re-sign with the team, is there a scenario where you would draft this DST earlier in drafts? I don't think I would, for the fact that I don't mind streaming. I mean, I enjoy a set it and forget it defense if I can get it, but the one thing that I would question there in terms of, it's going to be a great defense, but at the end of the day, the Rams defense can get into a weird situation where their offense is pushing so much volume that teams end up in the fourth quarter just getting little cheapies, right? Trying to play catch up. So it may not be, because the offense is so prolific, it may not be the shutdown kind of scenario, because they're trying to force and push aggressive volume to keep up with the Rams offense. So I don't think I would draft them a little bit earlier. Still a fine target, right? We know the upgrades that they have made are absolutely crazy, right? But I don't know that I would necessarily sacrifice a very key late round value target for me over getting a defense. I don't know that I would make that sacrifice. Clark Kent says, I'm on the fence with Justin Jefferson because, if I'm not mistaken, he has one of the easiest schedules for wide receivers with his quarterback scenario. Scares the heck out of me. So seriously, I am considering trading. I hear you. Stick it out, though, because you're right. This is, one, friendly schedule, right? Two, there is the thing of, one, I do believe that Kevin O'Connell is legitimately a quarterback fixer, and Kyler Murray does fit the archetype of a player he can fix. I just don't think he can fix JJ McCarthy, because you can't fix what wasn't really broken. It is what it is, right? So if there's nothing to pull out, what can you really do in terms of developing someone? So that honestly might have been the issue. If anyone can get the best version out of Kyler, and to be fair to Kyler, and because I did a video on this before, there are reasons why it's been a long time since we've seen him supply a wide receiver one. The one healthy season we got from DeAndre Hopkins in Arizona, he was in fact a wide receiver one with a fantastic season in terms of yardage. So we could get that from Justin Jefferson. I know the quarterback situation scares us, but I would say hold on here. I would say hold on for sure. And then DBF Towel says, follow up on Gibbs or Robinson will be available, or perfect. Follow up on if Gibbs or Robinson will be available. They were not keepers, nor Chase and Puka. Ooh, okay. Yeah. And since your Taylor is your second rounder, was going to try and get maybe Monty later. I don't think either strategy is wrong, right? You could go with Puka. Obviously, that would stack you up with two high-end first-round picks, guys that would 100% be taken within the top half of fantasy drafts. But I still do think that going there and doubling up at running back with Gibbs or Bijan really would be worth it in terms of putting your team at such an egregious level, right? So I would either go Bijan or Puka. I don't think you can go wrong with either strategy, to be honest. But the appeal of that doubling up on running back is just, oh God, it's tough to pass up there. It's tough to pass up. From Just Lift D1W, Keenan Allen is there on. Is there another team like the Bills or Steelers or even Tampa Bay Bucks? I would think so. based on what we know about Keenan Allen, I think he wants to stay on the West Coast. I don't know at this point in his career that he would want to go back into a Pittsburgh or a Buffalo, honestly. I think at this point he is he wants to be in that warm weather. I think Chicago was a dark year for him, unfortunately. So I don't, maybe perhaps we see him go to, well, they already signed Debo, so that wouldn't be good, the 49ers. But I don't know. I feel like we're still going to see him somewhere out west, because I don't know if he would go back. But if there were one that he were to go to between those two, or between those three, I don't think the Bucs would do it just because of the depth that they have. It would make it a little bit messy. They've got a lot of depth at receiver. I do love basically all of those options that they have at receiver in terms of a Mecca. They say Godwin's looking good in camp. You guys know I love Ted Hurst as well, and Jalen McMillan as well. So they're super deep there. I don't know that the Bills would want to, can they afford to add another? Maybe the Bills would make sense if he wants to push for a win there, but I think we're going to keep him on the West Coast there. DJ Stevens says, any ideas on Tank Dell? I think you should target him in the late round. I'm coming around to it, right? Because of the fact that he didn't go on the pup. I would assume that he will be ready for week 1 because he didn't go on the training camp pup. Now, obviously regular season pup is still a possibility, but it sounds like they're working him in, and it's possible that he could be ready to go. And I would expect kind of like a slower roll, not to aggressively assert him, because again, they do also have some decent depth there with Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel as well. So there's bodies there. They don't have to push it aggressively, but I think it's worth a shot because the ADP is not going to shoot up by any means, because obviously there's a lot of skepticism in terms of what is really left in him at this point after that massive injury. But considering the discount that we're getting, it's worth a shot in late rounds for sure. We're hearing a lot of positives, obviously, around Jaden Higgins. Jaden Higgins did at least separate himself from everyone else on roster, but there's still room for someone else in there for sure. Miles Logan says, and I think we're not going to get to the mailbag questions. Whoops, that's okay. We'll get to them next week there. Miles Logan, because you guys kept the chat very live here. Miles Logan says, what are your thoughts on Trey Tucker? Seems like the ultimate steal at receiver, a number 1 that's not a household name. The reports out of camp are that Jalen Naylor is the one that is standing out, which is, I guess, is not surprising. Ultimately, we know it's going to be Brock Bowers that is the one. And then it's a question of what level of volume is going to go to the other guys. Will it be spread around, or is one of them actually going to step up there and really dominate? I think Tucker is a fine target because, again, these are later stabs. We're not going to have to invest a lot of capital, but it does sound like Naylor is the one that might step up there for sure. Cruise and Shaker says, what is your fantasy football league pet peeve? My pet peeve is low ball trades. Yeah, that's my pet peeve on that one. Very, very specific. Like if I get a low ball trade, and maybe this is irritating as a league mate, but if you give me a low ball trade and you know it, like I know that this is not like a mistake or anything. Like you knew that you were trying to throw out a cheap offer just to throw out a cheap offer. I'll ignore you. I'm not gonna it'll sit. It'll sit for a while there. That's my fantasy football pet peeve there as well. And also I don't love when people leave dynasty leagues, but I understand that sometimes there's reasons, right? Casey Coleman says, thank you. And one more, I am in an auction IDP league, $300 cap. Would you keep JSN at 51 and Trey McBride or would you, these are ors. JSN at 51, Trey McBride at 35, or Drake May at 14. I understand the value of JSN, but Trey and Drake at 14 is crazy. Is it? I assume it's definitely not super flex, right? Yeah, that's a lot for JSN. I'm not going to lie there. I might take but I also feel that's a little hefty of value on Trey McBride as well, especially with the risk for him. But I am pro late round QB, so even the value being super low on Drake May, I don't know that I would spend that either. I think I would. I think I might suck it up and do JSN at 51 or Trey McBride. I could lean towards the Trey McBride at 35 one because at the end of the day, we're still going to have egregious volume to him. Jacoby Brissett got the contract. He should start the majority of the year. They're going to be playing from behind. It's going to be 10 targets plus to Trey McBride every single week there. I know it's a bad team and people fear, but we have had nothing but bad teams in Arizona and nothing but the steadiest production from Trey McBride in terms of volume there. So I don't mind that at all. I don't mind that at all. So I would still go with JSN or Trey McBride on that one, just because I've been preferring a little bit more late round QB on that one. Appreciate the happy birthdays and nice stuff coming in as well. Let's try and let me catch up here and maybe rapid fire a little bit on these questions. Panda of Love, would you trade Rashee Rice and Lemon for Flowers and Stowers? No, I would not. Just because I worry about the value of Stowers ultimately not panning out to the level it would. I still prefer the Rice and Lemon side of that. Chabing, good evening. 3 wide receiver PPR league. Is Hero RB a good idea if you get the number 1 pick or 2? Yeah, 100%. Anytime I have 3 wide receiver league or multiple flex leagues, I go Hero RB strategy. I mean, it would take a lot in terms of running back value falling for me to go robust in a 3 wide receiver league. I prefer to start off with a wide receiver and then just bang heavy on wide receiver. Prefer to start off with a running back and then go heavy for multiple rounds at wide receiver. Although in this year, depending on if you get a back end pick there, you can be a little bit more flexible. But I would go Hero RB. But because of the depth that we have at running back this year, you can push your hero to round 2, because in round 2, there's still going to be guys there like Etienne, Saquon, Chase Brown pushed up a little bit. Amari Hampton, Derrick Henry is a high round 3 pick, borderline round 2 pick. So running back is deeper this year. So your pool of RB1s pushes out honestly to as high as, Derrick Henry. But I would wrap it up there and then hit wide receiver heavy for sure. Around the Kurt, in deep leagues, I'm taking shots on Demarcus Robinson. I don't hear anybody talking about him. Might be good early season play. I'm a fan of Demarcus Robinson. I always have been. I was hoping that we would have seen a little bit more. The reason why I'm kind of like, I'm not sure on that is because I was trying to hype him up last year and it just didn't pan out in the way that I thought it would. But it's reasonable, right? In case these injuries do progress here. So I'm not opposed to it. Late round and deeper leagues for sure. I'm a fan. I think he's still got it in him. Scott, what? Scott, I'm just showing comments here. I didn't read this one ahead of time. Scott made a comment about, do you think Brittany Mahomes can share the wife spotlight with Swiftie? Does that affect fantasy values? Travis is looking like he maybe partied a little too much at the wedding. I am low-key concerned. I've got one dynasty share that I was hoping to get a little bit more juice out of, but I fear that I might need to go and find another option there because he's looking a little like the offseason was a little too enjoyable for him there. So perhaps it does affect the fantasy value there. From Darren DM, CeeDee Lamb let me down last season, especially in the championship game. It was a subpar season for sure. Especially because, in his defense, he was playing through the injury there. So the presence of George Pickens obviously reduced the touchdowns. But volume there in general should still be good, but I feel you on that one. He was a disappointment for sure. Ella Fuimano says, excuse me, I am in half PPR. I'm taking Drake London as top 5 overall wide receiver. It's bold. It's bold for sure, but he does have the upside to get there. The ABC squared says Drake is low-key injury prone as well. I can't remember which Drake we were talking about. Are we talking about Drake? Drake London. has been dealing with injuries there. So that's a decent point on that one for sure. Cruz and Shaker says, isn't Tua hurt? He is. Back injury. They say it's not a major deal, that he would still be the one most likely tracking towards week 1. So not a long-term issue, just something that I guess they were being a little bit more cautious about that. And then on that same kind of subject there, Leaving says, don't they need to see what Penix is long-term? For sure, which is why I kind of think we might get a little teeter back and forth there. But also to that end, the coaching staff is also a worry there, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a new coaching staff. Yes, they need to see what there is with Penix long-term, but because they didn't have that investment, and neither did the GM. The GM is gone too. So this is a whole new group here. So they don't have that investment and loyalty in theory because that was not one of their picks. So if Tua did pan out, I don't think they would force Penix in order to, force Penix in to end up trying to see what he has to work with. I think they would, it's not a guarantee there, but I feel like could see some flip-flop there. But at the end of the day, Tua seems like he is on track for starting week 1. And if he were to continue to, put up, decent numbers and be semi-competent there, I could see where they stick with him and they don't give Penix a chance. From Dante Demora, like the video. Thank you. What do you think of Hunter Henry? Is he not the number 2 target attached to Drake May? People think last season was an outlier, but he still has May. It sounds like his job might be at risk there. The tight end Eli is coming in very strong there. And granted, camp hype is one thing, right? That's not a guarantee that he's going to push him out the way, but we are getting a lot of hype videos there. So it could be something real. But unfortunately, I have pushed Hunter Henry down to oblivion. So he is not a target for me in any way, shape, or form, just because with the addition of A.J. Brown, the addition of Romeo Doubs, we know the connection in terms of, especially within the red zone there, that we had with Kayshon Boutte and Drake May. I mean, Kayshon Boutte had like a ridiculous catch rate. I want to say it was upwards of 70% last season with Drake May. So he's an extremely reliable target for him. And obviously we've got other existing bodies there as well. I do think they're going to tilt more towards those receivers. So I am not targeting him too much there, unfortunately. Dante DeMora says he seems like a cheaper version of Dallas Goedert. Cheaper for sure, 100%. But the inconsistency is an issue for me. I would never feel comfortable rolling him out on a weekly basis. And Goedert has a much higher level, higher target level in terms of touchdowns. I mean, let's actually take a look at it here real quick, and then we'll wrap things up because we're going a little long. Dallas Goedert last season really stepped up in terms of touchdowns with 11 last season. Absolutely ridiculous. When it comes to Hunter Henry, 7 touchdowns, cool, red zone target. It was a good season, but it was kind of on par with what we've typically seen there. I don't hate it, but it was a lot of peaks and valleys, and on a week-to-week basis, I just didn't feel super comfortable with him to the same degree. So in tight end premium, decent target there, but I do worry about the rookie coming on particularly strong there. Let's see here. Yes, in the tank, so close. Yeah, tank is very close there, potentially returning. Around the Kurt says, give Tara some more likes. Thank you. I appreciate it. You're right. But you know what? I never ask for likes. I always forget to say that. But yes, liking the video does help. I'm starting to lose my voice here, so we're about to wrap it up here. And then let's see if we've got some more comments here. Henry is great for best ball. You know what? That one is a good one. I'm glad I went down to the bottom here. Supreme Link says Henry is great for best ball. Yeah, I would prefer to target Henry in best ball than redraft for sure. Because the overall volume there for the value that you're getting on him in terms of the ADP for sure, but the week-to-week basis trustworthy level, I can't get there in redraft. But for best ball, overall, that would be a nice tight end too for you to have for sure. For sure. I do like that one. Eliza says, I did my first SFB draft in NYC. Nice. And got McBride in the second round. Thought about you and your beers while I was there. Perfect. As I too got McBride. So hopefully McBride pays off big time here. Oh, I'm so happy you did your first SFB draft. It's fun, especially when you do the live draft. So for sure, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I hope that you do it next year as well. I love that more people are doing it, and I love that you got in. Fantastic. Hopefully Trey McBride goes off for us. You got value on him. I had to take him in the first. You got value there. I got him in the first. I took him in the first and then got Loveland in the second. So you getting him in the second there, significant value there. Excellent work. And then Casey Coleman says you live in Atlanta and the deep wide receiver to target is Jahan Dotson. He is killing it at training camp. I hope that it's finally his time there because there's no solidified wide receiver too. It's for anybody to step up there. So hopefully that would be amazing if we could finally have Jahan Dotson break out there. So I hope that is true. I'm holding you to that, Casey, that we are finally getting some kind of consistency there for Jahan Dotson to step up as the wide receiver too there. That would be wonderful. And then Armageddon says half PPR auction draft, spend up on Chase and Bowers, go cheap. Spend up on Chase and Bowers, go cheap on Walker and Lawrence at running back and QB. Good strategy. Good court strategy. Yes. I 100% agree with that. I will say that, hopefully Walker stays cheap on that one. I have been seeing that people are getting a little bit more comfortable with him in terms of all the positive news that we're hearing out of training camp, in particular his involvement in the pass game, more checkdowns and whatnot. So it seems like they trust him as a 3-down back. So hopefully the price doesn't rise too much on that. So just kind of have a backup plan just in case something does happen there. I would say maybe your backup plan be... Have your backup plan be Josh Jacobs, especially in auction, because of the fact that, people will be skeptical in terms of paying up for him because of the whole legal issue. So you can slide it in there on the cheap a little bit there and be able to get him at reasonable value. And obviously, if he plays a full season, that is, RB1 production. And the fact that we haven't had any formal charges yet, I mean, just based off what we've seen in terms of the NFL's process, it's kind of unlikely that we would get any kind of action from the NFL this season in particular, unless something were to happen in terms of like a video coming out or something, right? But even think back to the Alvin Kamara stuff, right? There's a process that they go through. So you often don't see the action taken in the same season that it happens, particularly because it's so close to the season there. So they just have like a backup option in case the price on Walker does rise, because everyone is getting very hyped around all the positive news around him for sure. But other than that, I love it, especially because I do think that like low-key Trevor Lawrence overall QB1 upside, very good price, very cheap. So yeah, big fan of that strategy. Think that's good. But appreciate you guys tuning in. I will be back here with you next week for sure. I promise. And again, as a reminder, if you enjoyed the show, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, my channel, It's Terra Time, and then also support Player Profiler as well, who this Dear Miss Fantasy podcast is through, available on all platforms. We talk a wide variety of topics on here, guys. Anything you guys want to discuss, whether it's Dynasty, Best Ball, Redraft, all that good stuff. I mean, even as we get in season, we can talk DFS and betting, right? But I know we don't talk as much Dynasty as some people would prefer. So just FYI, there are tons of channels in Player Profilers Network that are dedicated to Dynasty specific or dedicated to Best Ball specific as well. So be sure to check those out and check out the shows of my awesome friends there. But appreciate you all tuning in and enjoy. Oh my God. We're going to have football tomorrow. Ha! We didn't even talk about that. We're going to have actual football tomorrow. Is it going to be the guys that we wanted to see? No. But it is football, right? So we're going to have football tomorrow, and then we'll preview, preseason games, because we'll be figuring out if there are going to be guys that are very interesting starting in the real week 1 next week. So we'll have tons to talk about. So enjoy the game tomorrow. Enjoy a beer, whatever. We will talk again next week. Appreciate you all tuning in. Have a good one.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.